Well, first of all, as we know, gender, just like race, is socially constructed, right? It's made up by something, an entity, somebody, someplace, right? Said a long time ago that if you're this color, you're that. If you're not, you're that. If you're, all those sorts of things, right? Same thing with gender. That tells me that it's something that people have physically and mentally bought into. This whole notion around healthy and unhealthy forms of masculinity or toxic masculinity versus healthy masculinity, it's an ideology, meaning it's something that someone, a system, a society has told us, unconsciously and consciously, how to perform, how to be, how to act.
We can say in simple terms that masculinity can be described as a set of behaviors, attitudes, and characteristics that are socially associated with the male gender. Hegemonic masculinity is the academic term used to describe and what society knows as toxic masculinity, all of the negative characteristics that are associated with masculinity. For example, the belief that men are superior to women, and the belief that men should be strong and should be not allowed to show emotions and feelings.
So the connection to mental illness and masculinity is that it's a mental shift, really, it's what it is. When you understand ways of performing masculinity from a healthier perspective, it starts in your mind. It's a conscious effort for you as a male-identified person to say, hey, I want to show up this way, in a more positive way, in a more productive way, in a healthier way, versus how society, my parents, my friends, my homeboys have told me to perform.
One of the main characteristics of this normalized or hegemonic idea of masculinity is the repression of emotions. When we are not teaching our young adults and children that it is okay to say I love you to a male friend, or it is okay to cry, it is okay to show your emotions, when we are not teaching them, we are repressing a very important aspect of their socio-emotional development.
Mental health is sort of getting better control of those ideologies that are sort of at interplay in your mind. And so masculinity is the same way. It's the unpacking, right? And why, and sort of interrogating, why is it that I think this way? Why am I feeling this way? Why am I performing or demonstrating or illustrating my masculinity in such negative ways, right? And so it's all about reframing, right? Reframing how you think, and then taking the appropriate actions by way of speaking to someone to fully and completely redirect how you think about masculinity.
finishing certificate. It says I'm an officer in the Air Force. And I was on a banner as an undergrad. This is the head of...
Even within the military, there's still a focus on those more, I guess, manlier, air quotes, version of what it is to be in the military. In basic training, I remember the physicality piece of things. You have a fitness test, and it was common to compare each other's, run times. A certain day we had a combatives class where you do basic kind of fighting with individuals in a training atmosphere. And in one particular moment, there was kind of the two alphas, if you will, and they were pitted against each other. And it was, for a moment, I kind of felt like I was in ancient Rome or something, like watching two gladiators, but it was so much testosterone in that moment and that was exciting. And you could just look around and everyone was, it just kind of reflected how important that moment was of who was going to be the alpha of the alphas, I suppose. I saw it in fraternity life, I saw it in the military of kind of what it looks like to be a man, and it was confusing at times of what was the healthy version of that, and what was just a replication of what you see in the movies. Looking back, there's so many different ways masculinity can show up. Yeah, and it's unfortunate when only one way is seen, because I think people can get a little confused if the way they are masculine doesn't look like that. It can cause a lot of confusion, I think, and that's unfortunate. I grew up with high goals, and my older siblings really set the bar. All of us went to Oregon State University. My older brother was going to be there during my freshman year, so that was really exciting for me. My brother's had a huge impact on my life. My brother was in a fraternity, and his friends learned that he had a younger brother coming to OSU and were trying to recruit me, and I had zero interest in being in a fraternity. However, I had all this free time right before classes started, and I was bored, and they were playing basketball and the free barbecue, so that's a pretty good sale for an 18-year-old, and just started hanging out with them and really enjoyed the camaraderie amongst guys my age. I remember pulling my brother aside and just asked him his thoughts, because he was involved in the fraternity, had played a big part in his life. I was pretty conflicted. I remember he said whether I joined or didn't join, he would still love me, and I was still his brother. That meant a lot to me, that his love in that moment was very vividly unconditional. It was an amazing 4 years. Being a part of Greek life was a big piece of that. Just took advantage of college life as much as possible. I was carrying on a lot of my behaviors that I did in high school. I was trying to achieve and overachieve, and this was just another place where I could do that. And so I was very involved on campus with ASOSU and student employment, and ended up running and getting the chapter president position at my fraternity, and I loved it. And I was starting to notice, I found a lot of my identity in that.
I guess there are parts of college that around learning and understanding the experiences of others that in theory should help male college students to become more aware of how they've been socialized and to think differently. And so I guess that could be a good thing. But I think there may be just as many things about college that just amplify the parts of masculinity that are pretty problematic. So if you think about drinking culture, for example, men are more likely to consume alcohol, to binge drink, for example, and to use other drugs, and that contributes to other problematic behaviors as well. And so I think there's a lot of problematic masculinity that shows up in college.
During that time also, Oregon State in general, is my opinion, but also more specifically Greek life, there's an alcohol culture there that is present. And I also partook into that. It was part of the social, part of the fun. It was pretty normal to have that be part of your life. So I enjoyed working hard and partying hard, I suppose, and having fun with my guys. That started a trend of alcohol being very normal, to be a part of celebrating and having a good time, to the point where I just thought everyone was doing it. I honestly didn't think it was a big issue or that I was a big partier at the time or drank a lot, because relative to my other friends, I didn't go out 4 times a week. I only went out twice. Or I didn't drink over 10 beers. I only drank 5 or 7. And so that's something that I look back on and realize. After graduation, started a great job. I had been seeing a long-term girlfriend. She was also in a sorority and had a picture-perfect life, in my opinion. I was excited for that. Moved down to Portland, and a few days before starting my new job, we broke up. It was a big surprise to me, a huge shock. I was a mess. It was very emotional. I found a lot of identity in my success and in my relationships, and that relationship ended and it wasn't my choice, and so I felt a lot of control taken from me and a lot of my identity being questioned and turned upside down, and I ended up deciding to go to grad school, which really was the catalyst to consider joining the military, which was a huge part of my life. I think coming out of a messy time, because I was still seeking to be the best version of myself, and I was like, well, what better way to do that than join the military? And I was pretty naive joining, I'll have to be honest, and I think I had a lot of selfish motivations for joining, because I wanted to recapture what it meant to be a man, and I felt like joining the military was a big part of that, and trying to reestablish my identity that had been, kind of taken away from me. It was very difficult, physically, mentally, spiritually even. Had some really hard times, and in the past, hard times could be solved by hanging out with some buddies down the hallway, or maybe going to grab a drink with someone, but in that training environment, you don't have those outlets, and you're just in it, and it really kind of tears you down a little bit. There's a big conflict of not feeling great and knowing that you're growing, but it's super uncomfortable.
OSU has a lot of student veterans. Certainly their mental health concerns are right up there with a lot of other groups in terms of seriousness. And they're also a culture in and of themselves, and I think at times feel isolated from other parts of campus, feel misunderstood. They're often older, might feel like they don't fit in to the college experience as much.
The statistics show that there is a lot of drinking in the military as a general statement, but when you look at divorce rates and you look at alcoholism, it's a community that struggles with that. It felt a lot like college, hanging out with a lot of people similar age. We had this common bond of just getting through something tough, and very familiar territory of going out to the bars with a bunch of people, guys and girls, and it was very normal to just go out, drink as much as you could, and then come back and wake up at whatever time and do it all over again. And that was very familiar territory, and that restarted that kind of vibe, if you will, from college. When I returned to Portland, jumped back into the working world, and it just was more of the same, just amplified. And that stress was always there. And what also was always there was, a six-packs, and it was just acceptable just all around me. I was always up for happy hour. I was always up for one more. And I didn't really think I had an issue, but I definitely, looking back, think I was coping at the very least, but definitely abusing it as a way to escape my problems. Just struggles with my own identity as a man, and alcohol was the answer. And that was for a very, very long time. It was for a very long time. I was habitually drinking and addicted, I suppose. It's even hard for me to say that, because I like being in control, I like achieving, I like coming across successful, and I was hiding behind a bottle, and had just gotten so normal to that being a part of my life that I was lukewarm. I just was comfortable just doing whatever everybody else was doing, and just using that as an escape. And I was afraid to step out of that because it was hard, and it's still hard too. You know, those challenges don't go away overnight, and it's a constant struggle. It was hard to look around for a different option because I didn't know who could relate with me. I didn't know who to talk with about this, really. I remember being in Portland not that long, and hanging out downtown and with a group of friends, some Oregon State alumni friends actually, and a group of friends from Greek life, ironically, and catching up and doing what we used to do, you know, going out to the bars and having a good time. And I had a little bit too much to drink, and I realized that, and someone offered to drive me home. Before I knew it, we took the wrong turn, and we were in a residential area, and I was completely lost. We didn't have a GPS at the time. Our phones weren't as smart as they are now. And I was very confident, drunk confident, that I could get us home. And what should have taken like 10 minutes really took over an hour because I was lost. I didn't know where I was going, literally, but also figuratively. And wrong turn after wrong turn, we were slowly getting our way there. And we turned this corner, and keep in mind, I've had several drinks, and I'm not fully aware of all my surroundings, but there was a sign when we turned this particular street of a Catholic church that I had heard of. And we stopped at the stop sign, and I remember looking at it, and I just felt a sobering moment of guilt, of like, what are you doing with your life right now? You have all this potential and all this opportunity, and you're literally drinking it away. And it just reminded me of those moments in college of, you know, making some good decisions but making more bad ones. And I just reflected on different things I've learned with my faith of, you know, you can be growing, but if the weeds and the thorns are growing with you, it's not going to turn out well. You can't bear much fruit doing that. It was choking me out. And I remember that moment of just looking at that, and I was like, I need to go back to what worked. The next morning when I woke up, I remembered that moment, and, you know, being embarrassed about all the dumb stuff I did when I drank too much. But it was humiliating in the best sense of the word, of just being humbled, and ultimately decided to quit my really pretty lucrative, comfortable life in Portland and move down to Oregon State in 2017 to do campus ministry, and was so happy. One of the first times I reached out in a really honest way was with people in my church community. I think I found a healthy outlet in going to confession for the first time in a long time, and having someone not judge you when you just lay it all out there.
I have been a spiritual director, a mentor to Miles, and he has also worked and helped in many of our teams here at Newman. The first time I met with him, we met one-on-one here in my office, and he was very honest and open with everything that was going on throughout the year and all the experiences that he was having.
The thing about my faith that helped was that it was constant. It was there, and it provided me an outlet, and I'm very grateful for that. That bond that you have with people, the good aspects of it, the authentic brotherhood and common purpose, and striving to be not just better for yourself, but striving better for that other person next to you, has really driven me to continue and not sulk back in those old ways. And it also gives me a testimony to talk with other guys who are struggling, because I've been down those dark paths. And it's an awesome feeling when you find someone that's telling a story similar to yours, and you have an opportunity to influence them to not make the same mistakes that you did. When it comes to masculinity, I think I learned that being better than someone is a way to be manlier than someone else. And I think that can be very unhealthy. I'm really excited because I'm getting married this summer, and very lucky to be marrying her, and I'm very excited for that new chapter.
He is just a total joy. I mean, he's really laid back and easygoing, and in him I see a good father and a good friend and good brother, and I see that he has this really deep love and care for the boys that he pastors. I was very surprised by his vulnerability and his openness and his tenderness and the ways that he can be sensitive and gentle and things that I don't think I really affiliated with a male figure before Miles.
And life's going pretty well. It's a lot of work. I think there is a lot of hope for the future because I think a lot of what men seek, what I sought, and what I see in men I mentor and walk with now is men want adventure and they want to achieve something, and they have aspirations. I think that's good. That can be leveraged in a really positive way, and mental health has a huge part of that because having a fortitude, or I would say a strong mental health, can keep you in a positive direction on that. It's good to invest time in it and work it out, if you will. You know, how much time do you spend in the gym on your physical health? Could you use a little bit of that time on your mental health? There can be a lot of gains, if you will, with your mental health with just a little bit of investment in it. And I think that has a direct connection to masculinity because a lot of the things I've talked about are not bad things in of themselves. There's a healthy way to drink alcohol. I think fraternity of men, whether it be a traditional fraternity in college or the fraternity you have in the military, there's some beautiful things. I'm much more joyful and at peace now. I've been at Oregon State ever since and have found really a niche, I hope, in mentoring other guys. Old habits can come knocking on the door, and I think that's normal, and I think it's good to have a support system around you. I think I try to take the best things of fraternity life and of my military experience. How we think of the world and how we think of ourselves presenting in the world is largely on how masculine we feel as men. It's our nature, and so I think the way we think about manhood and being a man, they're so closely connected that it's good to spend time on it and prioritize it, and yeah, seek that adventure, just do it in a healthy way.
Does that make sense? Then you're Marshall. You and Ben are going to split the lady. Parker, I think that puts you in this window right here. So a lot of times the negative stereotypes that tend to come with cheerleading, I didn't notice as much when I first entered the cheer world. Nowadays, though, it's great because it's much more common and widely just accepted that males, might start at middle school level or at the high school level like Parker did. The nice thing about someone like Parker is he defeats all negative stereotypes. Parker has this amazing ability to not only engage the crowd, his teammates, anybody he interacts with. Having role models in the cheer world like Parker, there's just it leaves an indelible mark on people when they interact with Parker. It is the single greatest thing we can do to grow our sport, having somebody like Parker who just has this amazing personality, who's loving and accepting of all people. He absolutely helps crush any negative stereotype that there is with male cheerleaders.
So I'm from Portland, specifically Milwaukee, a smaller town in Portland. I went to private elementary school, private Catholic school for high school, and then my way over to Oregon State. In elementary school, I started making some friends, as every kid does. Around third, fourth grade, a lot of my friend group left my school, and I was really just left alone. Around fourth grade, my dad had a heart attack and had quadruple bypass surgery. And as a fourth grader, it's not really the easiest thing to go through, other than just know, hey, your dad's in the hospital. Let's hope that he gets better. So I never really understood the gravity of everything at that time. So 5th grade comes around, and around this point it's like when everyone starts, figuring out who they are. When you're a kid, you're just a kid, but when you're middle school-ish, you start trying to figure out who you are and how you want to function in the world. And I was doing this kind of alone. I really didn't have any friends, so it was hard for me, I guess. And started, figuring out, coming to terms with my sexuality and dealing with the bullying that's happened throughout my entire life, just, hanging out with the weird kids. Left elementary school feeling down, but optimistic because high school was a way to restart my life. I went into high school, started to form some cool friendships a couple of weeks in, and then about a month in, someone outed me to the entire school, which I was fine with. I just, really wish it was my own, time to say. None of the guys at that high school really trusted me, liked me in those early years. So I was once again stuck to that small group of friends, which was fine. I think I had a really cool group of friends. Well, sophomore year of high school, I got into cheerleading, something that I still love. At this point, I'm really not starting to feel good about myself. I'm in high school, you're trying to figure out who you are, and I thought I figured out who I was, being, a gay guy, gay, cis, white male, just trying to live in society. I guess all those years of just like bullying or like just the comments, even in high school, like really started to catch up with me. I contemplated suicide, at one point I even, wrote my last will, but recovered from all that.
Parker's had a very hard life, and that doesn't come without those things. In those moments, you are your strongest because you are your weakest. The ability to go through and survive those moments shows that you truly care about something, and there's something keeping you here. It's not the strength in not doing it, it's the strength in having felt that. It's the strength in having moving forward from that. Personally, I believe that Parker is stronger, and each of those times that he does have those thoughts and those feelings, I only hope that he tells me and that I can be there for him.
Kept thinking, similar situation, middle school. Well, once I get to college, I can restart. And, I graduate from high school, come to college, and around that summer, coming into my freshman year, I finally go to my doctor. I'm like, hey, I'm not feeling well at all. Like, what is up? So they do a little screening with me and diagnosed me with clinical depression, anxiety, and high stress. So went into college with that, started, medication, therapy, tried to get control over everything. And I thought I was doing a really good job at first. You're in college on your own, starting your own life. So I was like, great, I feel good. Things started to go south again. Changed my majors because I didn't like what I was doing. I was failing in all my classes. And come around sophomore year of college, I'm doing the best I've ever been in cheer, but that was really only it. I started to put all my academics to the side just to try and focus on cheer. And at a certain point, cheerleading became the only thing that would get me out of bed, sometimes even wake me up. I'd go to 5 a.m. practices like you're supposed to. And after practice, I would just hang out with my coach in his office and just skip classes. And then eventually I moved back home, stay home with my parents, and my dad, during Christmas of this past year, was diagnosed with cancer, leukemia specifically. He passed at the beginning of 2021, and ever since, it's just been me and my mom. So now it's just trying to live another day, I guess. The day before my father passed, I went up to the hospital with my brother and my mom, and we went up to the ICU. My dad always liked to laugh and make other people laugh. So it was really weird going in almost every day, seeing this really funny, happy man in an ICU bed. So we went up the day before he passed, and we were getting him ready to take him off dialysis. Basically the only thing that was keeping him alive at that point. We have dinner with him, say goodbye. We come the next day, and he's just lying there, motionless, eyes closed, can't talk. Just trying to spend time with him, make sure that we're there for him. But at a certain point in the day, I was like, I can't be up here anymore. This isn't good for me mentally. And I can't, watch my father die. I don't think anyone can. So I stay around a little bit longer with my mom. And, at a certain point, I tell my mom, I'm like, hey, I can't stay up here any longer. If you want to, that's fine. So I leave. A few hours later, come back to pick up my mom. And, she wasn't ready to go yet, but we were basically saying, we need to go now, or it's gonna be too traumatic for all of us. Towards the end, it's really, really hard because there is nothing you can do. I think I got in my car and, cried for about 20 minutes before I could even start it. What else are you supposed to do?
It was hard. Parker shuts down. Parker doesn't like to express himself very much. For now, I know it's causing a lot of strain on him, mentally, physically, because he has to work a lot, because he's now supporting his mom. He is under such extreme pressure. He doesn't seem to have the room for failure. He's the hyper-independence that most men in society feel. And he's so young and trying to hold all of that. I personally have just tried in every single sense to be there for him in every single way that I can be.
I think I left terms with my dad pretty well. I don't feel any regrets or any remorse. I was as open with my dad as I could be, and I knew that he loved me and I loved him, and I made sure that he knew that. So if that meant being there towards the very end, it meant being there. I don't think there's a specific time where masculinity awareness really clicked with me. I think it was always just around. Just, being a gay male, it's always a question whether if you're masculine or not.
That stigma can hurt a lot of people. It hurts in the sense of men don't feel comfortable always doing the things that they want to do. The expected femininity in being a gay cheerleader just isn't always there. Parker's very masculine. He's not the most feminine man I've ever seen, and he's not the most masculine man I've ever seen. But it's expected from a lot of different people that you should be a certain way if you are a certain kind of person, and it's just not true.
To this day, I still struggle to meet people and open up to people. You're told, to be yourself as a kid, but the second you're criticized from your peers and all the people around you to be someone that you don't want to be. So trying to have this double life can really take a toll on you mentally. I mean, I've felt burnt out for years now. I feel like I can't really do much more just because I need a break, but somehow I keep pushing through it, and I don't know how. There's definitely a lot of people that still assume that any guy on a cheerleading team is gay, but I think it's questioned less once you get to the collegiate level. But in high school, it's, every day people are like, well, doesn't that make you gay? I'm like, well, as a gay male, yeah, it does. What about it? Something that I like to do, and I'm gonna keep doing it. I'm very optimistic that I'll grow up and be part of this rising where, being part of the LGBTQ+ community is going to be more accepting. However, until, more older people start accepting that as normal, it won't change at all. My rights and the rights of many of my friends are talked about almost every day up on Capitol Hill. I don't want my rights taken away from me. So it's something that I gotta keep fighting for, and something that, you know, I'm very passionate about, trying to make sure that not only I have the rights that I want, but people, you know, generations after me will have what they need to succeed. You know, there are times where my mental health really does struggle, you know, for weeks on end sometimes, but I think overall, you know, people like myself take for granted, you know, the amount of work that they've completed to be where they are today. I mean, I was a middle school, high school student contemplating suicide every day. Now it doesn't even cross my mind. It's something that I got to keep working on. You know, many other people should also keep working on, but with time, with the right healing and, you know, right combination of medication and help, I think I'll be at a pretty good point in my life. The people that have helped me most are my friends. You know, they're not really going to judge me. They're just going to be there and listen to me and, you know, support me in any way that they can. And I think family can do that as well. So I think that having that really nice blend, that tight-knit community of people that you can go to when you're not feeling well is crucial. Recently, mental health awareness has just been opened up by so many more people. I mean, so many people are battling with, you know, mental health, and it's nice to see, you know, more and more people are taking it more seriously and being more accepting of it. So I'm really optimistic that, you know, we'll get at a point where it's not as taboo as it used to be, and I'm really glad with the progress that we've made.
And yes, you'll get an email, and then I'll flip back over to the public view, so not, because this is the admin view that we're in right now, and this is just a mock.
You know, Jason as a speaker and a co-teacher is not afraid for conversations to get real. You know, his teaching and his engagement with students here at OSU is so impactful is they don't feel like he's BSing them. They don't feel like they're getting delivered the same message about these topics. Anytime that we're, you know, going into conversations about diversity, inclusion, masculinity, it's important to have an understanding of, you know, the person that you're working with. And so, you know, through those conversations and through also opportunities where I've had to see him speak and deliver, you know, conversations with people on campus, you know, I've certainly learned about him and his past and where he's willing to be, you know, vulnerable to talk about, you know, issues related to race and his background and different things like that.
I oversee our masculinity or college male development program here at Oregon State University. It's called Men's Development and Engagement, in which I have the amazing opportunity to engage in conversations around masculinity, gender identity. I've devoted my life's work to engaging in conversations around healthy forms of masculinity and redirecting specifically college men as relates to how they demonstrate their masculinity and sort of how it plays out on college campuses and throughout the greater society. For me, I can only speak to mental health in context of my culture, my upbringing. I identify as an African American or black male, and I'm from the South, specifically North Carolina, so the Jim Crow South, the Deep South areas. With that as some sort of contextual background, within my family specifically, and perhaps other African American and black families, mental health is not discussed in a way that allows folk to be vulnerable and to share if they are suffering from any type of mental health illnesses. Up until probably 2 or 3 years ago, I've never had a conversation with my family members about the importance of mental health. So because mental health is such a taboo in the Black and African American community, I've never had an opportunity to be vulnerable. I've never had an opportunity to openly discuss how mental health has impacted me. I share that because as I sort of recall moments of my life in which I was severely impacted mentally by things around me, I can recall moments in which I felt all alone, and I felt as if I was sort of experiencing life challenges all by myself. And because I didn't have that sort of vehicle to seek out the help I needed, I experienced a lot of personal harm. And it's by the grace of God, my God, that I'm even here today. When I was, I want to say around 10 or 11 years old, I attempted suicide. And I've never shared this before with anyone, never with anyone. When I was about 10 or 11, it was really apparent to me that I was lacking a positive role model, a positive male role model in my life. My father was sort of out of the family, out of my life, in and out of prison and on drugs and all those sorts of things. And so I started to act out. And when I started to act out, I felt as if my back was up against the wall. For me, I thought that my life was in shambles. And again, I didn't have the language to articulate what I was going through and how I was feeling. And I also didn't have that support to even talk out loud to anyone about what I was feeling. I thought I was alone. And so for me, looking at people around me sort of committing suicide, I thought, well, maybe that's what I should do. I was literally in that much pain. I remember it was around the Father's Day weekend. And back then, you know, the fathers would come to, you know, school and have breakfast or whatnot with their sons, right? And I didn't have a dad. My dad wasn't there. And I was teased and I was bullied because all of the other kids in my school, they had their dad. Everyone's father or dad came to the cafeteria to eat lunch and do those sorts of things, and I was kind of by myself. And my teacher, because my father wasn't there, my teacher had me to sort of sit kind of away from the other students and their dads. And so I felt, not only did I feel already alone, but I felt punished because I didn't have a dad. And that moment stayed with me. I was crying hysterically, and my teacher did nothing. And so I wasn't successful then, and I said, okay. And it was sort of one of those kind of like, ooh, I'm glad that didn't happen. That was my first little moment, if you will, with a mental illness. Okay, again, I didn't have the language. And I didn't tell anyone, ever. Fast forward to my second year at North Carolina Central University, my sophomore year, I began to wrestle with my identity. Not my racial identity, but my identity as a man. I just kind of felt out of touch. I felt as if my body, my mind, my soul was yearning for something. I didn't know what that something was. I was struggling with the ways in which I was to perform my gender identity, my masculinity. One time with some friends, we were underage, under 21. I went to a party. Throughout the room were a lot of guys disrespecting women and disrespecting each other. It was a very unhealthy, male-dominated space. I was like, okay, I can't fit in with the males in this space. I recalled the fact, and then I also started to kind of blame myself, like, why is it that I can't be a man? You know, why can't I connect with these male-identified folk in a way that everyone else is connecting? And I said, well, it was my father. My father wasn't in my life. And I had never healed from that hurt and that pain. And so somehow or another, I kind of brought that memory back into my sophomore year in college. I'm 19, 20, maybe 21 years old. And again, I tried to commit suicide. I sort of suppressed that identity and that thought for a long time. I share that because that also, when I think of mental illness and masculinity, gender identity broadly, I think about how I felt whenever I was in that period of my life when I didn't have the language, I didn't have the support or the courage to speak with anyone about the things I was going through as I was sort of unpacking what it means to be a man. Yes, I did come out here for, for a great opportunity, for a job, working at Oregon State University, this place, phenomenal institution. But I also came out because I needed to escape the current environment in which I was in, right? Which was the conservative South. Very racist, very religious.
For Black men, it is a challenge for us. Historically, we have always been challenged or told that we cannot show emotion. That we have to look back to the inception of slavery in this country, and when Black men would try to be dehumanized or breaking down their manhoods because they knew they were strong and they were built. And so you had to break them down to the core. It goes with trust too. So once you're able to break down and they see your emotions, then you look weak. So in order not to look weak and to continue to hold that strength for the family and even just to survive, right? You have to be strong. You have to suppress things. As you see Black men in war, having to fight and always constantly fighting, that's trauma. If you don't let that out and release it, it bottles up into something else.
I wanted to escape that, to figure out, okay, who are you, Jason, and what is your goal in life? And I think that as I'm still searching for my overall purpose, I think I'm pretty much on the right path. All of the stars are starting to align for me. Has it been easy? No, not always. But it hasn't been overall, it has not been a negative experience. It's been a very positive and rewarding experience. I do miss home. I miss my culture. I miss my people. But I do feel welcomed here, and I feel supported here.
His passion. I know that it's just a lot of the work and a lot of work that he did at his previous institution too kind of drives this. And just knowing that students here have similar experiences as well. And he has his own folks that have helped him as he's continuing to grow and being on the journey that he's on. And even his own masculinity, right? And what does that define? Who defines that? Who determines that? You do, right? How does that impact other people? That's not your problem. I think he's figuring that out.
I am very familiar with the ways in which hegemonic masculinity is manifested. I am a product of that. Everyone is a product of that, right? And so I like to name that and start conversations there, and then slowly but surely help usher men into different ways of unpacking and understanding what it means to be a man. Is it easy? No. But for my approach is to let me just gather folk, male-identified folk, connect with them where they are, right? And from a very authentic place. And as we build rapport and relationships with each other, like you and I have, it's then whenever I and you, we begin to trust each other, and we can begin to kind of go deeper and deeper and deeper and have conversations, both around masculinity, right? But we also know there's a lot of research to support this, that the ways in which specifically male-identified folk make meaning of their masculinity, it has everything to do with their sort of mental capacities to understand what's happening around them. I see myself as an example always, and I see this work of both of sort of raising awareness around mental illness and raising awareness around healthy forms of masculinity. I see that as me. I'm that walking billboard, right? And so I take this engagement very, very seriously. I do think that we are making positive shifts and changes and moving in the right directions because we're having conversations like these. Have we arrived to totally erasing unhealthy forms of masculinity or totally normalizing and bringing awareness to mental health? Absolutely not. We have a lot more to do, but we are well on our way, right? Because I do also know that with me sharing pieces of my story, pieces of my journey, I've seen transformation within college men, literally all around the country. That has been one of those sort of anchoring topics that has sort of positioned me as not an expert. I'm only an expert in one thing, and that's myself, but as a person that can contribute to the literature of masculinity, gender identity, and to bring in that flair or that lens of racial identity development, right? And so I hold both of those very near and dear to my heart because there, in my opinion, there's not a lot of black and brown men specifically, and white men, but black and brown men talking about masculinity as well as talking about mental illness. We have to have, in very bold and courageous ways, conversations about critical and important topics such as masculinity and mental health. For me, how I best do that is by role modeling what does it look like to both physically show up in authentic ways as yourself, and secondly, I interrupt when I am able forms of unhealthy masculinity that I see.
Growing up, it was always playing sports. You get knocked down in soccer, elbowed in the mouth, in basketball, get pegged with a ball in baseball, whatever it was always get up and keep going. Gotta be that tough guy. Mental health was never a topic that was brought up when I was younger. Never a talk with friends or family or anything along those lines. Took me a little while to realize that, there's a difference between being that big, strong man that society would want to portray you to be versus being able to, show that emotion.
Caleb was a really active kid, and he was a great baby. He really had a lot of personality right from the get-go. He walked really early, could kick a ball at about 18 months.
I found the most passion for soccer and decided to kind of take that sport and run with it.
He was playing a lot of sport, but we could tell soccer he was incredibly passionate about.
I left the house around 15 years old to go out to Minnesota to play for a little academy called Shattuck St. Mary's. And that's kind of where I started my soccer career. Coming into OSU my freshman year, I had a pretty successful kind of freshman campaign.
Beaten to the ball by Caleb Etter, a freshman from Reno.
Was able to contribute to the team, play a few games. finished out my freshman year and headed back to Reno during the summer. And me and my family, a couple of my friends, took a trip up to Canada. During that trip was when I first started feeling, you know, some pain that radiated in my right eye. It's kind of shooting to the back of my head. Between me and my parents, we couldn't quite figure out where the pain was coming from or how to handle it. Eventually, kind of just fought through that pain until I got home. But the first day that we were back in Reno is when the pain level skyrocketed.
That night was really horrible because we were in bed and Emily, our older daughter, came down to me and said, "You need to come down, Caleb is crying like I've never heard him cry. You know, Caleb doesn't cry." He just doesn't. So I went down there and he was just holding his head and he said, "I've never experienced pain like this before."
So we get to the ER and they start pumping me with some antibiotics. From the looks of the MRI, some doctors were predicting, you know, some sort of brain infection. Eventually, with multiple teams of doctors coming in and offering their 2 cents, we had decided on taking an ambulance all the way down to Stanford. Being in the back of that ambulance for 7.5 hours and just thinking about, you know, the worst possible outcomes. I had cried all the tears that I had.
I held his hand almost the whole way because he had to be on a gurney. And he was feeling pretty okay at that time. He wasn't having a lot of pain, but I could see the worry in his eyes and he said, "You know, what's gonna happen to me, Mom?"
You have to sort of accept that there's a possibility that, you know, you could die from this. When I got admitted into the Stanford hospital, I had different team of doctors coming in on the hour doing different tests, PET scan, CT, MRI, drawing blood for labs, all of the above, to try to figure out what was going on. After the first few days of being down at Stanford, we had a doctor come in and give me and my family the first real answer that we had gotten. And it turns out that it was cancer. The type of cancer that was proposed was a blood cancer, and the doctor wrote it up on my whiteboard. She wrote Langerhans cell histiocytosis, in parentheses, LCH. To have the tumor in that location was pretty rare. The reactions that I got from my parents in that moment were ones that would stick with me for a long time. In particular, my dad, you know, growing up, he never really showed emotion the way he did those first few days in the hospital room. I remember vividly him coming over to the side of my hospital bed and kind of climbing into bed with me, and we were able to share, you know, a heart-touching moment that I had never felt before. It really gave me, you know, a sense of strength to see how much they cared. And it happened on multiple occasions. I mean, that hospital bed was, you know, where we received the worst news to, you know, anything somewhat comforting. And no matter what the news was, it was always, you know, my family there first.
You know, I don't really remember what precipitated it. I just remember Caleb kind of being, I don't know, I just felt like I needed to be in bed and hug him, you know what I mean? So I didn't really know what to say. You know, it's, and I'm not one that's a loss for words usually, so it was, I was in a weird spot. So the only right thing, or the only thing that felt right was to hug him and just climb in bed with him and basically snuggle with him.
It was one of the first times in my life that I had really seen my dad, you know, kind of break down and express, you know, the love and support that he had for me, you know, to kind of fight through what was going on at the time. Within those first few days down at Stanford, I had, you know, lots of tests being done and all that, and everything was going so quickly. But in the heat of the moment, I kind of remembered, like, hey, I'm still on soccer team. I haven't been able to make it back out to campus yet. My team has already started training, getting ready for season, and my locker has just been empty for, you know, all of preseason. And so I took a little time to reach out, and I contacted Joel Walker first.
I just knew in that moment, like, man, the strength in this young man, even though he might be at his weakest state right now, I see so much strength, so much courage, so much faith in him to know that he's gonna come out stronger out of this.
Eventually, maybe a day or so later, sent a text in our team group chat, you know, kind of just breaking it down once we had confirmed that it was most likely the Langerhans cell histiocytosis, and that I wouldn't be able to play for that season, but that I was working on a treatment plan and, you know, was gonna stop at nothing to get back to campus and, you know, cheer my guys on from the sidelines that season.
If you meet Caleb, you'll know that the last thing he'll do is throw in the white towel. He's a fighter, but the best way he could fight in that moment was by being vulnerable and being transparent, open with me. And so that was probably to this day, one of the most encouraging moments I've ever had in my life.
Eventually, we decided on radiation treatment. Ultimately, it allowed me to, you know, fight off that tumor, but I also got to get back up to Oregon during what would have been my sophomore season and, you know, support the guys, which was what I needed after going through the last 6 months.
I went in there one day in early October and I said, "Are you ready to go back to school?" And he said, "Yes." So his sister and I, Emily and I, packed him up. We left 2 days later, got him settled, and as soon as he saw Joel saw the truck and he comes running out of Dutch Bros and runs across the street. I don't even think he looked for traffic and just embraced Caleb so hard. And that was the first time I saw Caleb like just smiled so big, and I knew that he was back where he needed to be.
About a month after my radiation treatment, I got my first checkup MRI done to, you know, see if the tumor was still there. I finally got a notification while I was in the locker room that the radiation treatment had worked. And I specifically remember reading the, you know, case on my phone and just kind of jaw dropped. Went to the nearest person that was next to me. I think it was maybe Kalade, and I just kind of like showed him the phone. And I was like, I'm cleared. Like, I can get back out on the field. And once that really settled in and I had kind of realized, you know, everything that I had gone through up until that point, I broke down. I was bawling my eyes out, had all the guys around. That was a really awesome turning point for me in my diagnosis. You know, just like anybody who's played sports growing up, you know, there's always that kind of that mental barrier that you have to put up when you're in a game or something. It's always good to be able to have that physical strength, but it's even more important to realize outside of sports where your head is at mentally and how healthy not just your body is, but how healthy your mind is. I've learned that it's okay to cry. It's okay to open up about your feelings. It's all right to talk about emotion. It's okay to not be okay, especially in the sense that, you know, if you're having a rough time, and sometimes the only way out of that is to allow help, you know, go and seek help from others, whether that be close friends, people that you love. It's okay to find help. I was fortunate enough to find a second family away from home that wasn't just the soccer team. I was lucky enough to join Damn Worth It, be in a group of people that, you know, unconditionally love each other the way that they do is really special.
Damn Worth It is a mental health awareness campaign that myself and Taylor Ritchie, a former OSU gymnast, started back in 2017 after we both lost teammates to suicide. We both went through our own mental health journeys, and it made us really passionate about ending the stigma around mental health and creating a community that cares about mental health, something that's been a passion for him throughout. And now, you know, we get to give him a great platform to share his story, share what he's doing, and how the intersection of illnesses like cancer or others have a really strong intersection with mental health. His involvement in the team and what he's doing now at Damn Worth It is so critical to our mission and what we do. Like, he exemplifies everything that Damn Worth It is.
With the specific type of cancer that I was diagnosed with, being a blood cancer, there's always possibility for it to come back. And so that's why it's important to do, you know, monthly to yearly checkups, MRIs, to make sure that the cancer doesn't just start building again. You know, I'll get asked if, you know, like, are you scared that it would come back? If I got through that first early diagnosis, I'm for sure gonna be all right. If it decides to come back again, I'll have it mentally beat. I'm prepared for it this time. I'm pretty damn strong.